Washington says we're decoupling from China. Brussels says the same. But last quarter, ASML, the most strategically important company in semiconductors, made 49% of its revenue from China. Not 20%, not 30%, 49%. I'm going to show you the $400 billion exposed in plain sight that proves decoupling is the most expensive lie in modern business. What CEOs say privately is completely different from what politicians say publicly, and the gap is widening every single quarter. Let me show you what I mean. In 2019, I sat in boardrooms where executives genuinely believed they'd be out of China within 5 years. They had spreadsheets. They had timelines. They had government pressure breathing down their necks. Supply chain managers were booking flights to Vietnam, India, and Mexico. The trade war was raging. Tariffs were climbing. Everyone was drafting exit strategies. Then they actually tried to leave. That exodus never happened. Instead, something far more revealing occurred. Apple, Tesla, and ASML didn't just stay in China. They doubled down. Let me show you exactly what the numbers reveal. Here's a statistic that should end every decoupling debate forever. In 2023, Apple generated $72.6 billion from Greater China. That's 19% of total revenue. And 95% of iPhones are still manufactured there, not just assembled. Manufactured. This is the number that keeps trade policy advisors awake at night, because it means the most valuable company in America is fundamentally dependent on its primary geopolitical rival. But Apple isn't alone. Tesla's Shanghai Gigafactory produces 950,000 vehicles annually. That's over 50% of Tesla's entire global output coming from one Chinese factory. ASML's China revenue hit 2.79 billion euros in the third quarter of 2024 alone. That's 49% of their total sales in a single quarter. And despite all the decoupling talk, U.S.-China bilateral trade reached $758 billion in 2022. That was an all-time record, not a decline. A record. Now, people always ask me, what about the alternatives? What about India? What about Vietnam? What about Mexico? Here's the reality. India received $1.7 billion in iPhone production last year. China received $52 billion. Vietnam assembles products. China innovates them. Mexico handles final assembly. China does full-stack manufacturing. These are not equivalents. These are not even close. Most analysts still don't understand why leaving China is nearly impossible. So let me introduce you to someone who tried. I'll call her Sarah Chun. She's a pseudonym to protect her identity. Sarah is 44 years old, Stanford MBA, with 15 years of experience managing Asian supply chains. In 2020, her CEO gave her a clear mandate to risk us from China within 36 months. That was the mission. She toured 47 factories across Vietnam, India, Indonesia, and Mexico. Her team evaluated over 200 potential suppliers. And here's what she told me when I met her at a conference in Singapore. She said, "We spent $40 million and 3 years trying to replicate what Shenzhen does in a week. In Shenzhen, if I need 10,000 custom screws by Tuesday, I make one phone call. In Vietnam, that's a 3-month conversation. In India, they ask me why I need custom screws at all." Her company moved 12% of production to Vietnam. Then they quietly moved 8% back to China when quality collapsed. What Sarah learned, and what most Western strategists completely miss, is that China isn't a factory. It's an ecosystem. You cannot relocate an ecosystem. China's advantage isn't cheap labor anymore. Labor costs there have risen 400% since 2000. The real advantage is complete vertical integration. Materials, components, engineering talent. shipping infrastructure, and speed. All of it within a 200-kilometer radius. Now, Sarah isn't unique. Every major Western company has a Sarah somewhere in their organization. But the most dramatic example isn't consumer electronics. It's semiconductors. I spoke with a senior ASML executive at an industry conference in Munich. What he told me was fascinating. He said the export controls didn't reduce our China business. They accelerated it. Here's what he meant. In October 2022, the United States banned advanced chip equipment exports to China. In 2023, China became ASML's largest market. By the third quarter of 2024, China represented 49% of their revenue. Chinese companies rushed to stockpile everything before restrictions tightened further. They're buying everything ASML is still allowed to sell at any price. SMIC, China's largest chipmaker, ordered 2.5 billion euros in equipment in just 18 months. This is what the Chinese call Changgo. It means rush to purchase. It's strategic panic buying, and Western policymakers completely underestimated it. And while Washington was still debating policy, Elon Musk opened a megapack battery factory in Shanghai in 2024, not 2019. He could have built it in Nevada. He chose China. Why? Labor costs are 60% lower. Permitting took 6 months instead of 6 years. And the supply chain for batteries, including lithium processing and cell manufacturing, is 80% Chinese. Apple, Tesla, ASML, 3 different industries, 3 different countries of origin, one identical conclusion. China is not optional. If you're an institutional investor still pricing and decoupling risk, you're pricing in a fantasy. But here's where this gets truly dangerous. Every quarter, earnings calls feature CEOs carefully threading a needle, satisfying Washington's rhetoric while protecting Beijing's revenue. This balancing act is not sustainable. Someone will eventually slip. The companies winning right now are the ones mastering the dual narrative, talking decoupling while investing deeper. The companies losing are the ones who actually believe the political announcements and move too fast to inferior alternatives. Look at what happened to Intel. They announced $100 billion in U.S. chip investment while simultaneously lobbying for permission to keep selling to China. Their stock dropped 60% from its peak. They got trapped between 2 narratives, and neither one matched reality. If your strategy assumes decoupling will happen in 5 years, you need a new strategy. The money has already voted, and the money says we are not leaving. I spoke to 3 hedge fund managers last month. All 3 told me the same thing. They said, "We ignore the political noise now. We just watch the capital expenditures." So where does this actually lead? We are not entering an era of decoupling. We are entering an era of decoupling theater, where political performance and economic reality exist in 2 completely parallel universes. Apple, Tesla, ASML, 3 companies that represent consumer technology, automotive innovation, and semiconductor sovereignty. All 3 are more dependent on China today than they were in 2019. This is not coincidence. This is structural. The future has 3 tiers. The public narrative says we're diversifying, de-risking, reducing dependence. The corporate reality says we're optimizing within China, not leaving it. And the strategic truth says the cost of leaving exceeds the cost of staying by orders of magnitude. Executives face a simple choice: believe the rhetoric and fall behind, or read the earnings reports and stay ahead. This isn't just about China. It's about whether Western policy can survive contact with economic reality. So far, reality is winning. Let me leave you with this. 49%. That's the number I opened with. That's ASML's China revenue share. Remember that number the next time someone tells you decoupling is working. The decoupling narrative is not a strategy. It's a sedative designed to make Western audiences feel better, while Western companies do the exact opposite. Politicians speak in summits. CEOs speak in earnings reports. And right now, they're having two completely different conversations. Watch the capital expenditures. Follow the money. That's where the truth lives.